Oh, there he is. Here's my guy. Good job. How's your new show going? Good?
Very well, thank you.
I heard good.
Thank you, Mr. President. I love that. He always asks, whenever he sees me, he asks me, how you doing? Asks my opinion of what he's done lately, and then he always asks about my muse, my bride, because that's just who he is. The 45th President of the United States, Donald John Trump, someone who supported him all through the hard times and is a patriot to boot, is, of course, our friend Mike Lindell. Did you hear me talk about the slippers? My pillow slippers arrived. This is going to shock you, okay? I wore them out of the house today. I wore them out. They're black. They look very cool. They're a little bit kind of Gucci slippers, okay? So check them out. 25 corporations are boycotting Mike Lindell because he's a good guy, because he loves America. Please support him. Go straight to his website. Send a message to the cancel culture leftists by ordering one of his more than 100 products made in the USA. Go to mypillow.com and Mike's going to give you more than 60% off if you use my name. Send the left a message. Call 800-829-8468 to order today. That's 800-829-8468, mypillow.com. But you've got to use the promo code GORKA. Somebody else who served on the inside, she saw the inside of the sausage factory, is my very good friend, even from before the days of the Donald Trump administration, former Assistant Secretary and spokesperson for the Treasury, Monica Crowley. It's been too long.
I said it has been too long, but I'm so happy to be back with you, and your story about President Trump made me miss him even more. How much do we miss this man?
I asked that question about 2 weeks ago, and my Twitter blew up within a day. It was like 40,000 likes. I just asked, who misses 45? And I got a very, very large and loud answer from the Americans that miss him. But he's not gone, and he will be back. Let's talk about your wheelhouse, Monica. You were right there. You were at the top of the Treasury, supporting the Secretary. We need a sanity check. We need a reality check on what's happening in the economy, especially in those free states, such as Florida, such as Texas, where the economy is doing very nicely, thank you. Can you explain it to us? And who's responsible, Monica?
Yes, well, Donald J. Trump is responsible for the economic recovery that we are experiencing and that we began to experience really last May and June of last year. We started to experience unemployment numbers coming way down. We started to see economic growth at record levels, particularly in the third and fourth quarters of last year. It's definitely continuing into the first quarter of this year. And, you know, what's remarkable, Seb, is that not a lot of people know that the economic growth that we saw last year, again, particularly in third and fourth quarters, was record growth. It was the fastest economic recovery on record from any crisis. And that was a large
We're losing you. I don't know if you're moving about, but so record growth could continue, Monica?
The fastest economic recovery on record. And it began last year, and it was due to President Trump's common sense policies of economic growth. Tax cuts, regulatory relief, unleashing America's energy sector, and of course, fair or reciprocal trade deals. So when we came out of the pandemic in the spring of last year, those policies were still in place and they kicked back in. So what we are experiencing, Seb, is the Trump recovery. We may have a new president in office, but he has not yet moved on the economy, and I hope that he won't, because everything that President Biden talked about during the campaign, from tax hikes to re-regulating this economy to abandoning some of the common sense economic growth policies of the previous administration, if he goes down that path, all of the gains that we have seen will be erased. And not just that, we will be going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, we have to give credit where credit's due. Let me run something past you that I don't know if I discussed this with you when you were in the Treasury. I know I've discussed it on the show with at least one of our guests, and I just, you know, as the professional who's been right there in the decision-making loop, why do we measure national GDP? Why do we measure growth as a national function, especially in this completely divisive Chinese virus environment? When you look at the massive discrepancies between economic indices in states like Florida and Texas, vice Massachusetts or California, or here in DC, which is a ghost town, which is still shut down, wouldn't it be illustrative to the American people to demonstrate how the economies are doing in Republican states that are open for business as opposed to Democrat states that are still under the boot of their governors?
Absolutely. It would be very useful to do a state-by-state breakout of state economic growth numbers and overall economic numbers. We've always done GDP, and we should continue to do that because it's very helpful to know what the United States is putting out in terms of total output, total economic activity. So that number is important. However, for a little less than a year now, we have seen red states run by Republican governors with Republican state legislatures operate at a far higher degree than the blue states. Blue states, by and large, have continued their lockdowns, continued with very intense restrictions. And those states, led by the biggest ones of them all, California and New York, have been huge drags overall on the national economic recovery. So, yeah, I'd like to see a state-by-state breakout. I'm not sure that we're going to get it, thanks to the Biden administration, but it would be very useful. The other thing I want to point out, Seb, is that those two states that I mentioned, California and New York, have governors who are under fire for a whole variety of reasons, not least of which is their response to the pandemic with lockdowns and very intense restrictions. Now that those governors in California facing a recall effort and in New York facing the threat of impeachment, suddenly they have decided to open their economies.
Yeah.
So the restrictions are lifting. It's not a coincidence. And that tells us it's even more evidence that these lockdowns and restrictions were always political.
Cutting through the propaganda, getting to the truth. Former spokesperson, former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Monica Crowley. I've got one more question to ask her at the end of the show. Follow her right now, at Monica Crowley right now. We are broadcasting from the ReliefFactor.com. Sadly, we're living under a Biden-Harris administration. What does it mean for your finances? More debt, more regulation, more money printing, less growth, and higher taxes. The importance of owning physical gold and silver has never been greater. Call the veteran-owned Midas Gold Group today to get their guide to owning bullion and coins. Call 480-360-3000 or go to MidasGoldGroup.com.
Portions of America First are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
I usually wrap my own show because it's my show. But there's a question left that I want to ask my friend, my former Trump administration colleague, that I didn't get to. So I'm going to ask it now. Monica Crowley, working at the tippy-tip top. That's what AOC says, right? The tippy-tip top of the Treasury Department for the Secretary during the Trump administration. I get to talk about what it was like in the West Wing, what it was like in the White House. But I want you to confirm Donald Trump was different, right? I'm sure your old boss, the secretary, can attest to that. Give our listeners, our millions of listeners across the nation, a little bit of a flavor of what it was like working for DJT.
It was an incredible experience, really the adventure of a lifetime. And as you know, Seb, I mean, I was one of the very first people to go on national television right down after he came down that escalator and said he was going to pull the whole thing off. So for me to be able to be part of his administration was such an honor and a blessing. And every day was something new.
And talk about the speed, the rate of work that is required by people who work for Donald Trump.
It's incredible because, you know, he is a whirling dervish, and he was certainly that way as president. So you always had to bring your A game, and you were moving at 1,000 miles an hour at all times, and he was doing it and asked all of us to do it for America. It was an authentic sense of service to this great country, to bring this country back. And that's why he did it, and that's why the rest of us were all there.
And you are the person I've quoted multiple times on this show across the nation as I've been speaking, because you nailed it. The week after the election in 2016, you said, they just don't understand this man. He's not an ideological candidate. He's not an ideological actor. He is an attitudinal one. And his attitude was get it done for the country because we love it. You said it back then, Monica, and you nailed it.
Thank you, Seb. And it's 100% true. And it was such a blessing to be part of such an incredible moment in history. And it's not over.
It is very, very far from over. The president is already working out of his office in Florida, not his library, not some old retired president painting pictures like Bush. No, his office of the former president. He has already endorsed multiple political candidates. He's back in the media. And his CPAC speech, if you haven't watched it, we're going to post it again right now in its entirety. They tried to scrub it. They tried to delete it. But you need to watch it because he's back. He's on form. And for 1 hour and 10 minutes, he told you everything you need to know about the radical left, the Biden-Harris or Harris-Biden administration. And he left us with a very simple message. 2024, it's not over. I'm Sebastian Gorka. Keep your head in a swivel. Watch your six. Hold the line. Never give up. Never give in. And stay frosty.